Javi Garrido is one of the most powerful players in the world. That is why Wilson has developed a new version of his racket, the Blade V3. It's a very different from the V2, but is it better? Is it powerful enough for Javi to use it? Hello all players, I'm Pablo and I welcome you to a new 4Set. Wilson is one of the most prestigious brands in the world of Padel, and one of the best selling rackets each season is the Wilson Vela Pro Fernando Velasteguin's racket. But with Javi Garrido signing this year to Wilson, the Blade has gotten more attention. Javi has been playing all season with the Blade V2, but a few weeks ago Wilson revealed its new racket, the Blade V3. And today it's time to compare the new with the old, because believe me, there is a big difference between these two. Before we start, I'm sure this graphic will help you understand the Blade's position among Wilson rackets. As of today, the Blade is the most powerful racket Wilson has, though be careful because control and agility are not his strengths. But to really understand the racket, we need to start with its technical features. Well, both weigh between 355 and 375 grams, and both my V3 and V2 weigh the same, 371. So we can say they're heavy rackets, or at least for me. Well, both have carbon fiber, but the big difference lies in the core, because the Pro V2 had soft EVA foam while the Pro V3 has firm EVA, a much harder foam that also used in the Vela Pro V2.5. Well, on the other hand, both rackets have hybrid shape and 3D roughness. But here, there's one thing about the V3 that didn't convince me, because the 3D roughness on the V2 feels better than on the new racket. Actually, while neither is amazing, the V2's roughness helps you get more grip on the ball. My V3 has a balance of 27 centimeters while the V2 is 26.2, and this difference is very important, so remember it for later. But another difference is in the holes. If you look at it, the V2 had the same diameter in all its holes, while in the V3, the larger the holes are at the top and the smaller ones are at the bottom. This tries to maximize the sweet spot at the top and firmness at the bottom. Well, let's think about it. When we hit a smash, we will do it with the top part of the racket. So on the V2 there were no holes in that area, making it stiffer, but the V3 doesn't need to be harder, which is new core. Well, if you wanna buy the V3 at Padel Market, enter the code 4Set to get a final price of 221 euros. The V2 is already discontinued and is not sold new, though you might find it second hand. But alright Pablo, so in summary, what's changed is the roughness, the core, the balance and the holes. But are they that different? Well, yes, they are really different. So to understand that, let's start with defense, which is crucial with this racket, because it is undoubtedly the area where you struggle the most with the V3 for two main reasons. The first one that affected me the most is the maneuverability, because it's really a tough racket to move, and the second is its sweet spot. It's clear this is a harder version than the V2, so the sweet spot is smaller and the ball output is also lower. So it's quite a bit harder to get ball over the net, and you feel like the racket doesn't help you as much as the V2 does. It's also true that the V2 obviously is not new, so it's softened with use and over time. But in defense, the feel of the softer core is much more comfortable than the hard core of the V3. And remember that the almost 1 centimeter lower balance on the V2 also allows for much easier movement. So in short, anyone who buys the Blade won't want to defend the whole match because they want to be at the net. But be careful, because it is a very technical racket in defense. If you cannot move the racket well and don't have good technique, you will struggle. But what happens with volleys? Well, here the situation changes a bit. In my opinion, the V3 acts like an Aston Martin and the V2 like an Audi. The V3 has a higher performance route than the V2. In other words, if you want to be more aggressive, the V3 has a higher limit. But however, the same issue as in defense arises. The V3 is a more technical racket than the V2. So if you don't hit the ball just right, you won't get the speed you're aiming for. The sweet spot is more than the V2s and the comfort level too. So because of this, we often feel uncomfortable with volleys and the V2 is a better ally. In fact, I would prefer the feel of the V2 in volleys because it lets you do more damage with less effort. But where both could improve is in the roughness. Actually, that becomes more noticeable with Bandejas and Vibora shots. Because when we try to make a Vibora with lots of spin, the racket doesn't grip the ball fully. I guess Wilson could look into adding roughness directly from the mold or using a sandy finish. Other than that, the V3 gives you stability in a fast impact that the V2 cannot. So when you hit the ball just right, it gains a lot of speed and weight. But at the same time, the V2 is more forgiving and lets you play more comfortably. So for example, in an early defensive bandeja, the V2 will be easier to use. And with the V3, we will have to make a full swing to get enough speed on the ball. And in the end, the low ball output of the V3 lets you control where your shot goes as long as you execute it well. But what about the smash? Is the V3 that much more powerful? Well, here is the thing. I tried hitting 10 smashes with each one on a very cold day in Madrid with used balls. So no worry, I'm not Superman either, but the conditions were not ideal for smashing. But still, the feeling was clear. The V3 is definitely more powerful, but it requires a player who can make the most of it. I don't have the strength to push the V3 materials to the limit, and the V2 being softer lets you generate more power with less effort up to a point. And I didn't reach that point, which is why I felt more comfortable and got better results with the V2. But if you're a player like Garrido who hits the ball very hard, the V3 is a bomb. So Pablo, who would you recommend the Blade Pro V3 to? If you're an offensive player with a lot of power, good technique, and able to move any racket with short swings, the Blade Pro V3 is your racket. I would not recommend the Blade Pro V3 if you don't meet these characteristics, but as you can see, the V3 has evolved quite a bit from the V2, because the Pro V2 was an offensive racket but quite far from this Pro V3. However, Wilson also has more comfortable models than the Blade Pro V3. There is the Blade V3 and the Blade LS V3. The Blade V3 changes the carbon fiber for a mix of carbon and glass fiber, while the Blade LS V3 I think will be my favorite racket, because it has fiberglass, soft EVA and 355 grams, making it the softest and lightest of the three. That makes a much easier to move model for attacking well in volleys and bandejas. Well, do you have any questions about Javi Garrido's new racket? Leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching the video and see you in the next one. Ciao!